The cold, sterile walls of the alien prison cell hummed softly, casting an eerie, bluish glow on everything within its confines. The faint buzz of the energy field surrounding the cell added to the tension in the air. Inside, a human soldier, named Alex, sat against the wall, his arms crossed, eyes focused on the distant shadows that flickered across the darkened room. He had been captured during a covert mission, and now he was nothing more than a prisoner on a foreign planet, left to rot in a high-tech cell with no one to hear his calls. Alex's thoughts were a mixture of frustration and curiosity. How had everything gone wrong? Just hours ago, he had been infiltrating the enemy's military base, gathering crucial intel that could change the course of the war. But in the blink of an eye, he was ambushed by an overwhelming alien force and thrown into this dark, strange prison. His situation seemed hopeless. Yet, as the minutes dragged on, he couldn't shake the feeling that something far more dangerous than just his capture was at play. There was an unsettling quiet in the air, an unnatural stillness, as if the very world around him was holding its breath. He felt eyes on him, but not just the usual surveillance cameras. No, these eyes were different. They were watching him from a distance, not through technology, but through something far more personal. The door to the cell slid open with a soft hiss, breaking his concentration. Instantly, Alex's instincts kicked in, and he stood up, every muscle tensed. He wasn't expecting visitors. As he peered into the doorway, his eyes locked with hers. She stood there, framed in the doorway, tall, regal, and undeniably otherworldly. Her skin shimmered like the surface of a distant moon, glowing faintly in the dim light. Her long, silver hair flowed like liquid metal down her back, shifting with every movement. Her eyes, they were the strangest of all. A deep, luminous blue, almost glowing with an unnatural intensity. Yet there was something soft about them, something unfamiliar. The alien woman didn't move immediately, as if weighing her options. She was unlike any being Alex had ever encountered. Her features were delicate but strong, her presence radiating authority. She wore an elegant, sleek armor that hugged her form, a perfect blend of both beauty and deadly power. It was clear that she wasn't just some guard. She was important, someone with authority. But what was her purpose in this place? For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was thick, almost palpable, as though the air itself was waiting for something to happen. Alex narrowed his eyes, unsure of what to expect. His hand instinctively moved toward the concealed weapon hidden beneath his prison tunic, but something in her gaze stopped him. It wasn't fear. No, there was something else in her eyes. A curiosity, a challenge. "You are Alex," she said, her voice low and melodic yet sharp, cutting through the heavy silence. Her words weren't English, but Alex understood them perfectly. The language of the aliens, a species he had never encountered before, seemed to bend around him as if it had always been part of him. He nodded slowly, his mind racing. How could she know his name? "Yes," he answered cautiously, his voice steady, despite the rising tension in his chest. "Who are you?" Her eyes flickered with something, amusement maybe? She took a step, closer, her movements fluid, almost mesmerizing, but with a hint of danger that sent a chill down Alex's spine. "I am known as Ceres," she replied. "I've come to see you." Alex's heart skipped a beat. There was no way she was here for something as simple as a casual visit. The air was heavy with meaning, and Ceres's presence was more than just the physical space she occupied. It felt as though she was watching his every move, studying him, understanding him in ways he couldn't explain. He couldn't help but feel a strange pull in his chest, an almost magnetic connection. Was it the danger in her eyes, the confidence, in her stance, or something deeper? A part of him, a deep, primal part, was drawn to her, as though they were destined to meet. But he quickly shut that thought down. He was a prisoner, and she was the enemy. Whatever was happening here, it couldn't end well for him. "What do you want with me?" Alex asked, his voice firm, but there was a crack in it, betraying his Uncertainty. Cirrus tilted her head slightly, her lips curling into the slightest smile. It wasn't a cruel smile, but one filled with something Alex couldn't quite place. A smile that spoke of secrets, things she knew but wasn't ready to share. "I've been ordered to punish you," she said softly, her words hanging in the air like a weight. Punishment. The word hit him like a slap to the face. He had expected torture, yes, pain. He had prepared for that. But this? He didn't know what she meant, and the ambiguity only added to the mystery. Who was she really? Why did she seem so different from the other aliens he had encountered? There was something about her that didn't fit with the cold, calculating enemy he had been trained to fight. Alex studied her more carefully, his mind trying to read her every move. But her expression remained unreadable. For a moment, all he could hear was the faint hum of the alien prison systems, the subtle sound of her breath, and the beat of his own heart, pounding loudly in his chest. Then, without warning, Cirrus stepped forward, just a few paces into the room, and in that instant something changed. The air shifted. Alex couldn't explain it, but it was as though an invisible thread had connected them. He felt an unfamiliar warmth, a strange energy between them. She was no longer just a distant figure to be feared. She was now standing in front of him, her presence undeniable. For the first time since his capture, Alex felt a strange sense of uncertainty. He wasn't sure what to make of this alien woman standing before him. Was she truly his enemy? Or was there something more to her? Something that neither of them yet understood. The silence stretched on, thick with questions, unanswered and unspoken. The tension in the air was almost suffocating. Cirrus opened her mouth as if to say something more, but then paused, her gaze shifting from his eyes to his lips and back again. There was something about her. Something human. Something Alex couldn't ignore. And as she finally spoke again, her voice softened. "Perhaps there is more to this than punishment." The words hung in the air, full of possibilities. What did she mean? Alex didn't know, but he was about to find out. The silence between Alex and Cirrus stretched on, but this time, it was different. The weight of her words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. She had called it punishment, yet there was an undercurrent to her voice, a hesitation that hadn't been there before. Alex was a soldier. He was trained for battle, for survival, but this was something he wasn't prepared for. Cirrus remained standing just a few feet away from him, her glowing eyes never leaving his. The silence between them was no longer uncomfortable. It was almost magnetic. The hum of the prison systems, the distant sounds of machinery, all faded into the background as he stood there, caught in the intensity of her gaze. Alex cleared his throat, trying to shake off the feeling of vulnerability creeping over him. He was in a foreign prison, alone, captured by a race of aliens who had no mercy for human life. Yet here he was, standing face to face with Cirrus, a being unlike any he had ever encountered. Everything in him told him to remain guarded, to fight back, but something about her presence kept him rooted to the spot. His pulse quickened, and for a fleeting moment, he thought he saw a flicker of emotion behind her cool exterior. Something deeper than her duty, something human. "You say you've been ordered to punish me?" Alex began, his voice steady despite the growing tension. "But your eyes, they don't look like you want to." Cirrus didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a step closer, her movements graceful, yet there was something predatory in the way she moved. Alex's heart skipped a beat as her proximity made the air feel thicker, heavier. She stood just a foot away now, close enough that he could feel the faint warmth radiating from her body, and the cool metallic scent of her alien armor. "I am bound by duty," Cirrus finally replied, her voice low, almost inaudible. "But duty is not always clear." There was a pause. She looked down for a moment, and Alex noticed a subtle shift in her expression. She wasn't as sure of herself as she seemed. For the first time, the alien woman appeared uncertain, as though something was gnawing at her, something that troubled her deeply. And in that moment, Alex's curiosity grew stronger. He wanted to understand what made her hesitate, why the woman who should be his enemy seemed so conflicted. "You don't have to do this," Alex said, his voice quieter now, more earnest. "You don't have to follow their orders." Saris's eyes flicked back to him, and for a brief second he could have sworn he saw a flicker of something in her gaze, something that resembled longing. But it was gone so quickly that Alex doubted himself. Was it his mind playing tricks on him? Or was there something more beneath the surface of this powerful alien woman? "You do not understand," she replied almost harshly, her voice regaining its earlier coldness. But Alex could see through the mask now. The way her shoulders tensed, the way she looked away, told him everything he needed to know. She wasn't as composed as she wanted to appear. He took a step forward, closing the gap between them, his instincts kicking in. He had no idea what was happening, but he couldn't ignore the undeniable pull. It was as though they were both trapped in an invisible current, fighting against it yet drawn together, unable to break free. "What if I do?" Alex asked softly, his voice barely a whisper. "What if I understand you more than you think?" For a moment, Saris didn't speak. Her lips parted slightly as if she was about to say something, but she stopped herself. Her breath came a little faster now, her chest rising and falling as her gaze softened. She reached out almost imperceptibly, her fingers brushing the side of his face, a brief touch that sent a jolt of electricity through his body. It was as if the simple act of touching him, of crossing that boundary, was both a defiance of her orders and an admission of something far deeper. Don't make me question my duty," she whispered, almost to herself. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he looked into her eyes. There was something raw, something broken, in her expression. She was battling with herself, torn between the strict obedience to her people and the pull she felt toward him. "I'm not asking you to question your duty," Alex said softly. "I'm asking you to question what you feel." Saris drew back, slightly, her hand pulling away from his face, but the distance between them didn't feel like it had grown. In fact, the tension was even more palpable now. Neither of them moved, but the energy between them had shifted, an undeniable force that neither of them could ignore. The silence between them stretched again, but this time it was thick with an unspoken understanding. She wanted him. Alex could feel it. She didn't just want to punish him. There was something in her that was pulled toward him, something beyond her mission. Something that was as dangerous to her as it was to him. "I'm not your enemy," Alex said, his voice almost pleading now. "You know that. We're not so different. You and I." Sarah's eyes flickered at his words, and for a moment, Alex thought she might break, but instead she stepped back, the cool stoic mask returning to her face as she turned away from him. "No," she said firmly, her voice colder. "We are nothing alike." But even as she said the words, Alex could see the truth in her eyes. The conflict, the struggle, it was all there. She was lying to herself as much as she was to him. And for some reason, Alex knew that their encounter was only beginning. Whatever this was, this strange, forbidden chemistry between them, it would not be easy to ignore. She paused at the door, her hand resting on the control panel. Before she left, she turned her head slightly, offering him one final, fleeting look. "Don't mistake this for weakness," she said, her voice low. "I am not like the others." With that, she left the cell, leaving Alex standing there, heart racing, mind spinning. He couldn't help but wonder, was she really his enemy? Or was she just another lost soul, caught in a war they both didn't understand? The door closed behind her with a soft hiss, but the feeling of her presence lingered, in the air. Alex had no answers, only questions. Questions that would haunt him until the day he found the truth. But one thing was certain. The story between him and Saris was far from over. The days that followed felt like they stretched on endlessly, each moment more confusing than the last. Alex had always been a soldier, trained to keep his emotions in check, to focus on the mission and nothing else. But nothing in his training had prepared him for this. Cirrus, the alien woman who had come to punish him. At first, that was all she was, a cold, calculating officer in the alien military. But now, she was something more, something that he couldn't fully comprehend, yet something he couldn't ignore. Her presence haunted him even when she wasn't near. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her glowing eyes, the way her fingers brushed against his skin, the conflicted look she wore whenever she was close to him. It had been several days since their last encounter, and Alex had been left alone in his cell with only his thoughts for company. The isolation had begun to wear on him, but he couldn't stop thinking about Cirrus. Every time he thought of her, he felt a strange, intense pull, one he couldn't explain. It wasn't just attraction, it was something deeper, something more primal. Then, one day, the door to his cell opened again. This time, it wasn't the usual guards coming to check on him. It was her. Cirrus stood in the doorway, her eyes locked onto his. There was no hesitation in her movements this time, no cold mask. She didn't look like she had come to punish him. She looked like she had come for something else. Her gaze softened, and for a moment the walls between them seemed to disappear. She wasn't an alien officer in that moment, she was just a woman. Alex. She spoke his name quietly, as though testing the sound of it. Her voice was barely a whisper, but the way it made his name roll off her tongue sent a shiver down his spine. He stood up from where he had been sitting, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do you want now?" he asked, his voice rough with curiosity and something else, something that made him hesitate to speak the words aloud. She stepped forward into the room, her glowing skin illuminating the dimly lit space. The door slid shut behind her, sealing them in. No guards, no interruptions. It was just the two of them. "I need to talk to you," Cirrus said, her tone serious. She didn't seem like the same person who had been poised to carry out his punishment. There was vulnerability in her voice, something raw, something human. Alex's heart beat faster as he tried to process her words. He couldn't help but feel that there was more to this, more than just an alien officer following her orders. "What about?" he asked, his voice tense. Every nerve in his body was on high alert. He couldn't afford to trust her. He had to remain cautious. But still, that strange pull he felt whenever she was near made it harder to control his thoughts. Cirrus looked down for a moment, her expression conflicted. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," she said quietly. "I don't know if I can continue obeying my orders, following the path they've set for me." The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. For the first time, he saw her not as the enemy but as a person, a soul trapped by forces far beyond her control. He saw her struggle, the way she carried the weight of her duty, and the internal conflict that gnawed at her. He took a step closer, his voice softening. "You don't have to," he said, his words coming out more as a plea than a statement. "You don't have to follow them. You have a choice, just like I do." Cirrus met his gaze, her eyes searching his face as if she were looking for something, an answer, a reassurance, anything to give her a sense of direction. She stepped closer to him, her breath shallow, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The air between them seemed to hum with unspoken tension. "I was sent here to punish you, Alex," Cirrus said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But now I don't know what I feel. There's something about you, something I can't ignore." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the emotional struggle she had been keeping hidden. Alex's heart skipped a beat. The truth was coming out, but it was so much more complicated than either of them had anticipated. This wasn't just about punishment or orders anymore. This was about a deep, undeniable connection, one that neither of them could explain, but one that they both felt. "You feel it too, don't you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly as she took another step toward him. The closeness between them was almost unbearable. The tension was thick, but there was a spark of something else beneath it, a recognition, an understanding. Alex didn't speak at first. Instead, he closed the distance between them. He wasn't sure why he did it, why he was moving closer to her, drawn by an invisible force, but he couldn't stop himself. Every instinct screamed at him to be cautious, to resist. But his heart, his soul told him something else. He reached out, his hand hovering just inches from her arm. For a moment, neither of them moved. Time seemed to slow as their breaths mingled in the air between them. "I don't know what this is," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I can't deny that something's happening, something that doesn't make sense." Saris met his gaze, her eyes filled with both fear and longing. "I've never felt this way before," she admitted. "You're not just a prisoner to me. You're something else." Her voice cracked as if the weight of her confession was too much for her to carry alone. And then, without another word, she closed the gap between them, her lips pressing against his. It wasn't a kiss of passion. Not yet. It was tentative, filled with hesitation and uncertainty, but also a deep yearning. It was a kiss that spoke of the confusion and longing that had been building between them. A kiss that was forbidden, yet inevitable. For a long moment, neither of them moved. They simply stood there, connected in a way neither of them could explain. And in that moment, it was as if the universe had stopped, holding its breath as they finally gave in to what they had been fighting against for so long. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads rested against each other, and the weight of what had just happened settled between them. Neither of them knew what this meant for the future. Neither of them knew if they could survive this forbidden bond they had formed. But in that moment, they both knew one thing. Neither of them could turn back. "I don't know what happens now," Saris whispered, her voice barely audible. Alex smiled, a small, knowing smile. "We figure it out. Together." And though the path ahead was uncertain, they both understood something profound in that moment. They were no longer just a human and an alien. They were two souls connected by something far stronger than any war, any orders, or any duty. They were bound by something that neither of them could escape, a forbidden, undeniable love. The moments following the kiss seemed to stretch into eternity. Saris and Alex stood there, still pressed against each other, their breaths shallow, their hearts racing. Neither of them knew what this meant, what this connection between them truly was. But it had become undeniable. Their bond was a spark that could not be extinguished. The consequences of this connection would be severe. But for the first time, Alex felt a surge of hope, something he had long abandoned in the bleak reality of captivity. Saris slowly pulled away, her eyes still searching his face. There was an uncertainty in them now, a vulnerability that Alex had never seen before. It made her feel more human, more real, and it shook him to his core. She was no longer the cold alien officer. She was a woman caught between two worlds, and she had chosen him. For reasons that defied logic, Saris had chosen to trust him. "I don't know what this means for us," she whispered, the weight of her own words heavy in the silence. "But I can't go back. I can't keep doing this to you." Alex took her hands in his grip firm yet tender. He looked into her eyes, his heart full of resolve. "We're in this together now. You're not alone anymore, Saris." The air between them seemed to shimmer, charged with an energy that neither of them could fully understand, but both could feel deep in their bones. There was no turning back. Now. Not after everything they had shared, but their passion had consequences, and Saris knew it. The people she worked for, her own kind, would not allow this to go unnoticed. She had defied their orders, betrayed them by allowing this connection to grow, and now it was only a matter of time before they came for both of them. "We can't stay here," Saris said suddenly, her voice filled with urgency. "They'll know soon enough. I've already disobeyed direct orders. If they find out what we've done." She trailed off, the fear evident in her expression. Alex's mind raced. The situation was dangerous, but this was no longer just about survival. It was about the future. About the chance for something better, something different. They weren't just two prisoners anymore. They were the beginning of something bigger. "Then we fight," Alex said with unshakable determination. If we're going to survive, we do it on our own terms, together. Saris hesitated, looking at him as if trying to gauge if he was truly ready to make such a choice. The risk was enormous. If they left, they would be hunted by both human and alien forces. The world they knew was about to collapse around them, and there was no safe place left. But in her heart, Saris knew that Alex was right. They couldn't hide forever. If they were to stand any chance, it would have to be now. Together, she agreed, her voice more resolute than ever. But we'll need help. I have allies, underground operatives who have resisted the orders from the High Command. If we can reach them, we might just have a chance at turning this all around. Alex nodded, his mind already processing the next steps. The idea of a revolution, of taking on the very forces that held them captive, seemed impossible. But then again, everything about their connection had been impossible. And yet, here they were. Saris moved quickly, her eyes scanning the room, as if anticipating danger. She activated the hidden communicator embedded in her arm, sending a series of encrypted messages to those she trusted. It would take time for them to respond, but she had no choice. She had to put all her faith in the underground movement, in the hope that there were others who shared her vision of freedom. As the hours passed, the tension in the air grew thicker. They didn't speak much, but every now and then, their eyes would meet, and there was a wordless understanding between them. This was it, the beginning of something bigger than both of them. When the response finally came, it was short but clear. Meet at the old transport depot, at the outskirts of the city. Time is running out. We move tonight, Saris said, determination burning in her eyes. Alex didn't hesitate. He trusted her completely, and he knew that whatever happened next, they had to act. They couldn't afford to wait. The countdown had already begun, and the stakes were higher than ever before. Their enemies, both human and alien, would soon realize the depth of their defiance. The journey to the transport depot was perilous. Saris led the way, her senses on high alert, watching for any signs of danger. They made their way through the labyrinth of corridors beneath the prison, avoiding detection with a precision born from Saris's years of training. Every step they took felt like a lifetime, and every corner they turned, Alex feared that their enemies would catch up with them. But they didn't stop. They couldn't afford to, not when they had this chance. At last, they arrived at the old transport depot. It was a desolate place, abandoned long ago, but it now served as a haven for those who had fought against the alien forces in the shadows. The people who would help them, people who had never stopped believing in the possibility of a world free from oppression. When Saris and Alex entered the depot, they were greeted by a small group of rebels, their faces grim but filled with determination. They knew what was at stake. They had seen the rise of the alien forces firsthand, and they had been preparing for this moment. "We're with you," one of the leaders said, his voice low but unwavering. "Together, we'll make sure this revolution goes beyond just you, too. The world will see what happens when we fight for freedom." Saris looked at Alex, her gaze full of trust. "We don't stop until we've won. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone." Alex smiled, the weight of it all finally sinking in. "Then let's make sure they never forget what we started." As the rebellion began to take shape, so did the hope for a future that no longer relied on oppression, on domination, or on fear. Together, Alex and Saris had ignited the spark of something far greater than either of them had imagined, and in that moment they knew this passionate revolution would change the course of history forever.